computer.
Going to give a talk this evening that's a little more on the traditional side of practice. And so I would like to start with one of my poems called Bodh Gaya, which if you don't know, it's where I spent many years, and the Buddha was, it's where he, in the Ganges Valley in Bihar state, he became enlightened. And so there's quite a bit of history there in the tradition. Mind like an alligator, touching chest, opening big jaws, but only to snap on empty space. Few, if any, stories, the jaws snapping to no end, yet in moments between breaths, a memory, one moment in Bodh Gaya, which illuminated Gautama 2,500 years ago. And for this one moment, pointing in that direction, just 36 years ago, one finished to full Buddhahood. The other began a lifetime of practicing and deepening. So out of that kind of specific traditions, there's very kind of traditional pieces. You know, they're what is known as the Four Noble Truths, which are really, you know, the Buddha said that in all of his 40 years of teaching, that these truths were always there, you know, in everything he taught. And in some ways, it's, you know, it's a prescription, very much like I guess you could say going to a doctor, the Buddha at the time. And, you know, there was there was a diagnosis, there was but now I'm forgetting, a prognosis and a treatment, you know, that was there for humans. And so he just, you know, it was very simple. He just simply said, you know, one of the things is, and we see this in our culture right now, I'm just amazed at what's going on. You know, if you're here in California, between the fires and the smoke, and I guess on the East Coast, the floods, and, you know, it's kind of apocalyptic. And then there is this pandemic. And then there is the kind of the, you know, I was thinking about just that enormous woman, Mrs. Ginsburg, passing away, who was such a heroine for bringing, you know, really awareness to the culture, particularly for the feminine. And so all these things are huge, you know. And then we have a very, to me, I was talking to someone, and I've been talking to different people that teach and stuff, and trying to say, well, how do we talk about all this, and particularly people that are not in this part of the country, when in their communities they have people that, you know, it's such a divided system right now, that are supporting another side of, and I'm being very nice, another side of the, to me, problematic election process, you know, which is quite stressful, you know. I mean, if you could just take one thing, you know, for me, if you could just take the environment, and that if we could just, you know, come to some means of recognition there. But I don't know. I'm just one voter. But it is kind of, it brings a lot up, you know. There is a you know, a line, which we're in it, you know. There's a Chinese curse that may you be born in interesting times. And boy, these are interesting times. So just with the, you know, and I know, I want to acknowledge, I know that, you know, I've been kind of teaching these last few weeks and with people and stuff, and a lot of anxiety due to the conditioning that's right up on the surface right now, you know. So I want to acknowledge that, because I think it's really an important truth, you know. And I also have to say that, you know, these teachings, when we understand that anxiety, it was exactly what the Buddha pointed at, is, okay, there is the anxiety, and there is lots of cultural reasons for it. There is a cause, and the cause is simply the fact that, you know, when there's any kind of tana is the word, it's grasping for and against things, that there is suffering. And that the practice is saying, okay, this is just, when we can see that, we also have the means. And that's really what he was trying to teach, is the means to let go of that. And he just spoke about it as, he used the word nibbana, which, you know, a better word probably is just peace, you know, just kind of not being caught, you know. So I wanted to start, actually, this is from the Venerable Ajahn Chah. I wanted to read, and what I wanted to talk about tonight is the traditional kind of three categories are sila, samadhi, and panya. And sila is kind of the virtue of ethics, and samadhi is kind of the effort and the mindfulness and the concentration. And then Panna is the wisdom factor. So these are the three, you know, and traditionally when it is taught, interesting enough, instead of ending with a Panna or the wisdom factor, it starts with. And so in a way, what this is asking is that here we're these intelligent people that have the capacity to see that there is, you know, what is determined as I'm going to change the wording. Usually they talk about right. I don't like that word, but I think wise. So there's wise view. So it actually starts with wise view. And that, so the practice is that there is at that point enough insight to recognize that we have that determination to recognize it, you know. So, you know, and that's really what the practice is when we come and we sit. And really, to me, the biggest piece about sitting, you know, yes, it takes some effort to, you know, settle yourself down, to come to a place where you're not messing with anything. And when you're not messing with anything, there is some stillness there, and out of that stillness, there is this propensity to listen. And when that propensity there is to listen, then there is a natural wisdom there that exists in you. But you have to set up and it's really what the practice about is, set up the way to do that, you know. And that's, you know, one of the kind of, you know, even though it starts with that, it's like, okay, if you can get this, then the others will all fall into place, you know. And so in the tradition, they talk about there has to be that wise view. There has to be, again, this is kind of tricky, because they talk about it as wise thought. So you have to have the proper view. Then you have to actually know what's going on in your noggin, you know? And to do that, there is this capacity that when we sit, there's always a stream of thoughts. And there is, in the wise view, there's the ability to discern. And so discerning means that somehow we know that when we initiate, you know, if we can get it, that when there's a moment of grasping and of greed or wanting, or in a case of aversive, that has consequences. And it may not seem like that, but as the Buddha kind of proclaimed that, you know, a thought is the forerunner of all actions, you know, and it's why in these particular practices, which are based on a kind of a subtlety of mind, that we have to monitor, you know, that if you don't know that there's greed there that suddenly becomes, you know, it's repeated and strengthens in the mind, then it can go into it can go into speech, it can go into action. So there is this this wise ability to understand the operating system of thinking, of the thought process, you know, and understanding that there is a way to do it. And this goes back to the next piece, because this is really the wisdom part of it, is that when we have that, you know, proper view and we have wise thought, then out of that, now, I sometimes like to reverse this, but this is the order that has been kind of proclaimed for years and years, and I should say centuries and centuries, which once those things are there, then there's this capacity to have right thought, you know, and that right thought then manifests and into this capacity to understand the speech, and the action, and livelihood. And that was really, okay, here's where it manifests. And this is the primal place it manifests. And so once we have that capacity to have the proper view of things, how, you know, how really it goes back to that thing of what is non-harming. And if we understand non-harming in its most primal way, and so that's one thing, and that's the capacity to not cause harm, but also there is an ability there to support and sustain kindness, goodness, actions that are supportive to our ability to, you know, be kind in speech, have actions that are supportive, and that we have a livelihood that is helpful and supportive to the social system that we are kind of dealing in. So that's second. So the first one is this thing around wisdom. Then there's a thing around the word sila, which is, you know, it really has to do with our conduct, and that has to be, in a sense, kind of brought to some very refined way of non-harming and supporting the culture out there. And then, of course, the third piece here is the samadhi. And the samadhi is, again, what we come together here for. And samadhi, you know, there is kind of the more esoteric thing of kind of these deep transpersonal states. But in kind of from this wisdom point of view, there is simply, there is effort, there is the mindfulness and the concentration. These three products come together when we come together to sit. And those, in some sense, are supporting factors. So I want to read, because I really, the whole idea here was I wanted to, I've always held this to be Lumpur Cha, Ajahn Chah. His kind of way of looking at these things was not, that was kind of, in a sense, clinical, the you know, the wise view and thought and speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. I just want to read what he says, and then I'll see where I go, I don't know. Traditionally, the Eightfold Path is taught with 8 steps, such as right understanding, right speech, right concentration, and so forth. But the true Eightfold Path is within us. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, a tongue, and a body. These 8 doors are the entire path, and the mind is the one that walks on the path. Know these doors, examine them, and all the dharmas will be revealed. The heart of the path is so simple, no need for long explanations. Give up clinging to love and hate. Just rest with things as they are. That is all I do in my own practice. Do not try to become anything. Do not make yourself into anything. Do not be a meditator. Do not become enlightened. When you sit, let it be. When you walk, let it be. Grasp at nothing. Resist nothing. Of course, there are dozens of meditation techniques to develop samadhi and many kinds of vipassana, but it all comes back to this. Just let it all be. Step over here where it's cool, out of the battle. Why not give it a try? And I think I wanted to give you kind of the classical piece and then his kind of explanation of it, because this is all it is, you know. This is a really simple thing, and there can be very much complexity, kind of intellectual breakdown of all these things, but the practice itself, it's, you know, in a sense, is self-explanatory. We simply come, and you know, I love this simple word called here. You know, if you have any doubts, if you have any thoughts, if you have any anxiety, projections, any of that, you know, it's really simple. I think that if we had a single mantra that would kind of facilitate how this works, It's simply the word here, you know? What's, you know, here? Nothing else. You don't need more than that. If you're here, then, you know, you're not in imagination. You're not creating something. You're not rehashing something. You aren't imagining something. And so if it's that simple, and if we can kind of stay with here, it's really why at the beginning I really have this thing about that body scan, that somehow there's so many options, and it kind of breaks down the options and just kind of says, okay, can you just stay here in the body? And you know, you don't have to exclude anything, but at the same time, you don't have to make up anything. You know, it's always been right here. One of the beauties of this, you know, and it's just kind of a piece I play with, is this thing called awareness, you know. And again, if we begin to support our attention, yes, there's the kind of Eightfold Noble Path, which is, all of that is true, and we understand something about the wisdom of you know, right view, and we have the understanding of that it takes attending to our thoughts, so that in some way that they can produce right speech, right action, right livelihood, and that they are supported by the effort, the mindfulness, and the concentration to sustain, to hold and sustain. You know. This word awareness, you know, it's, you know, I think the word sati, the classical translation is mindfulness. It's a lot more complicated in our cultural references right now, because there's, in business, and it's just holds a lot of different angles and views. Awareness, I think, is a better translation, because awareness is something that you have been working with since you can remember. And that awareness has always been attracted to one of the sense doors. So there is awareness which, you know, it has the field of, oh, it's in seeing. Oh, the awareness is in hearing. Oh, it's in smelling. Oh, it's in tasting. And ultimately, all we're doing is, in the sense of a dualism, is using that awareness to, it's actually married to the senses and the thinking, you know, so really the six sense doors, it's married to them. And and this is where we have to kind of get the kind of the fundamentals of Buddhism and see that, okay, we need to understand this in a very kind of you know, it is in some ways this kind of a technical way of getting that in the seeing, there's just the seeing. In the hearing, there's just the hearing. In the tasting, there's just the tasting. In the smelling, there's just the smelling. In the hearing, there's only just the hearing. And in the thinking, just the thinking. So they're all there. As these are really, these six experiences are the whole ballgame. You know. And that from a practice's point of view, we work with them, we get to know them really well. And then at some point, usually someone points out that, what about just the awareness as itself? Not just connected to those sense doors. And this is where it really gets interesting, because at that point, one has to, it's almost like turn that knows around on itself and recognize that, oh, you know, I've been searching for something that's I thought was in those 6 sense doors, somewhere in there, and they are not. You know, they're actually, it's actually the negation of those. It's like, oh, I have to let go of that seeing of the there's the there's the sight, so there's the eye, and there's the seeing, and there's the knowing of it. Oh, the knowing of it. Ah, so if I can release the organ and the system, which is the seeing, then what is there? There is the knowing of it. So we suddenly begin to get a hint that there is something that's available to us that's not dependent on the sense doors themselves. And at that point, then there's a certain system that has to happen. They say it has to be pointed out to you, and that you have to, learn or teach yourself when there's enough kind of wherewithal with all this, and have kind of explored them and said, oh, yeah, they are just what they are. That one then has to turn, in a sense, kind of turn the mind around. And you can, it's sort of using the knowing to experience the awareness. And that's still in a dualistic fashion. So when you turn it around, it still is in a dualistic fashion. But it's the only way, because this is the only training you've had, is in this dualism, to turn the mind around on itself, or the knowing around on the awareness. And you can't, it's kind of tricky, because you cannot, even noticing it, you cannot stay in it, okay? You can get it, but you can't stay in it. So there is a recognition, because once you recognize that that awareness is not something you produced, it's not something that was ever lacking, and it has a simple, direct taste. And that direct taste is that it is not caught in the cyclic nature, I'll go ahead, say, of existence. It is something outside of that. It's free of it. So there is this possibility, and it's not something that can be achieved, but it is something that can be realized. You can actually turn around and go, oh, I see there's something knowing things. That's knowing is always caught. And if I can let go of the dualism of the knower or knowing and the object, and the object then suddenly is no longer one of the 6 sense doors, but is just the knowing itself. Now, one of the things is you can't do this. Again, this is the problem with it. You can get it for a moment, but it's not something that you can simply just, it's like the idea, somehow we have this idea that if I have an enlightenment experience, that then I'll be that, And the problem is that that's kind of a fallacy, because what this is that becomes aware of the awareness itself simply has a specific taste. And that taste is a taste of freedom. It's actually, that's not hooked to any of the known world. It is actually outside of the known world. So if we can kind of turn around, and one of the things that has to happen is you have to have explored first, kind of a lot of things. And you have to then, in that realization that it's not an object, it's in a sense, it is just a presence. And that presence holds all of this, in a sense, all the duality of the sense doors, all the objects, all the emotions, all the feelings, all of that. But there's something that's outside of it. And that's that, in a sense, you could call it pure awareness. You could also say it's awareness without an object. And if the awareness doesn't have an object, then it exemplifies something. And what exemplifies is that if it's not in the world of sight and sound and feeling and smell and taste, if it's not in that world, or remembering, or planning, or whatever, then that is not of this world. So here is something that exists, that has been it's sort of like the horse and the cart. It's been going around, and suddenly to realize that the horse is not married to the cart. And yes, you can only kind of release it for a moment, and then what do you do? You have to. The horse hooks up again, because that's all it knows, and that's really where it's, in a sense, sits. I think it's wonderful. There, Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta. There, I think Adyashanti. I think there are beings out there who have broken the veil of the relative and this this awareness, and that in a sense, even though there's still, it's like the Buddha, even though he became enlightened, he was still here, and he had all of his relatives, and his aunt, and all the very complex kind of social situation that was true and real, and he was not caught by it, And so, in a way, this is an encouragement to all of us that we can be in the middle of all this, interesting times, and still have this. This is the thing. It's not, and it doesn't change it. It's not going to change what's going on out there at all. But what it's going to do is it gives that option, or that sense of instead of being absorbed by it, there are these little moments of freedom from it. And I always think, it's such freedom is such a paradoxical idea and world, because on some level, there's always, I think growing up, there was always this thing about, freedom was about freedom to do, to have. And it's sort of interpreted to us that, and I think in this culture, and particularly young people, kind of hold that to be true. I can be free to do whatever I want, whatever it is. But from this point of view, if there is the object, and the awareness, and we suddenly kind of turn the mind around that that knowing and recognize that suddenly there is freedom, but it's freedom from. It's freedom from the world that we inhabit, you know, that we, in a way, we're caught in the dualism of it. And so we can begin to recognize that, oh, if I can put more attention on being free from the, in the sense, it's kind of free from the known world, and it doesn't change the world, but it means that somehow there is a little bit of space between the emotion and the thinking in the body that allows us to have that space. And that space then, it changes how we look at the complexity of the relative world that we are now experiencing and living in. And so I encourage you on some level, you know, it's just this that, and sometimes I think everybody has experienced a little bit of this, but they haven't noticed it, that it's actually there. Because they're always in relationship with the object. Therefore, they don't see the freedom. And yet the freedom is there in all of experiences. You know, so yes, there can be a moment where there is a space of that awareness between the knowing of it and the experience of one of those sense doors. You know? And if there's some space there, then this is the thing, I think as a cultural truth, everyone is walking around in these trances, you know? And they're caught in these trances, and they believe the trances, and they think if only they can change the reality of the world, then they would be okay. And this is saying, you can't, this is not what that's about. It's actually changing your view, going back to that first of the Eightfold Noble Path, changing the view you have of the world, you know. And one of the beauties of this is, because this is, I think, the big thing is what does that kind of produce on some level? And you know, if I was going to be asked that, well, what do you get out of it if you just have these little moments of space between things and experiences? You know, that there is trust. You know, that suddenly you can begin to trust that you know, things may appear one way, but that may be a limited view of what it is. You know, I have to say, you know, this has been I've listened to a lot of people in the last couple of weeks, and I acknowledge the complexity and the suffering going on, and also that you know, the phoenix rises out of the ashes. And so right now we're kind of in the midst of this, you know, at least in this country, of a world that's very complex and limited, and that whatever this is doing, this may be the crucible that is going to free something up. in some sense, I have to look at it that way. Oh, it's going to free something up. And someone else can have a negative view of that, but I can say, oh, there's actually a possibility that that crucible, that, the worm to the dragonfly or the phoenix, that it may come out of this. And if not, we may just burn up and blow up the world. I don't know. But I like to look at it from that point of view, and that we're right in the thick. We're right in the thick of that is forcing a transformation. There is pain in that, and I want to acknowledge there are many people, that are having really life difficult situations with jobs and families and illness and the lack of. And so I just acknowledge that, but I also want to hold this as something that is going to we're good people, and I know bad things happen to good people, all that stuff. Okay, I understand that. But I also understand that I go back to the Eightfold Noble Path, that when there is the right view, and that there is the perpetuating of right thought. And I am just trying to support that right thought in this case is a positive spin on a negative situation, So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents worth tonight. I'm just kind of, I'm actually very tired. I wasn't sure what I was going to do tonight. So you got whatever it was that I did tonight. I hope it was helpful, because I think if you can recognize it's like the space between the knowing and the object itself, there is a space, and that space has a feeling and a knowledge that is not of this world. It's actually, that's maybe what I'm trying to say. It is the recognition of liberation that is inherent. That's not something, in some ways I don't think we achieve it. I think it's something, again, I always say that, it's something that we can realize. It's not foreign to us. So anyway, I will, I'm going to read this poem again, since I started with it. I like to do it that way. Bodh Gaya. Mind like alligator, touches chest, opening big jaws, but only to snap on empty space. Few, if any, stories, the jaws snapping to no end, yet in moments between breaths. A memory of one moment in Bodh Gaya, which illuminated Gautama 2,500 years ago. And for this one moment, pointing in that direction, just 36 years ago, one who finished to full Buddhahood, the other began a lifetime of practicing and deepening. So just taking a moment here, we'll kind of close with first acknowledgement of in this knowing, this awareness itself, that it is your birthright. It has been with you all the time, always married to something. And here we're just saying that, when it's not married to anything, then it is everything. There is that truth of non-separateness. And that when that kind of wide space is there, there's also enormous moment of kindness. And it's for this body. It's for the kind of the calculations of the mind, and also the ability to release it, which simply brings you back to the heart. And so when the mind and the heart and body are in unison, then there's this capacity to, in a sense, that word to be whole with our knowing itself. And that we, because of that, we extend this wish out first just for everyone that's here tonight, just our Sangha. And just wishing that you may be free from suffering, that you may be safe in your body and in your mind and heart, and that you may recognize peace in yourself and that's around you. And that you may be healthy in your mind and in your heart and your body, and recognize the importance of ease. And then when you hold yourself like this, then you also can extend out to others, not just in the Sangha, but those in our families or people we know or don't know, that we have this simple wish that they may be first free from suffering. And they may be able to experience and sustain happiness. And be healthy. And free from any inner or outer harm. That they may find food and shelter and friends and medicine. And that we have this great wish that in the world of complexity and so much suffering, that we extend this compassion for their well-being. And again, whatever harm or confusion happens in the world, that we extend this wish that beings may be free from it. And that if there is any merit or power or energy that is created through our coming together like this, that ultimately this practice is for the benefit of beings everywhere. May all beings be happy.